Lawler in 2016, defending that crown 4 different times in one of the most difficult divisions in all of mixed martial arts. Here he is taking on Jake Paul in just a matter of days, BC.
And what's interesting is he's one of the most decorated champions in UFC history. And we talked earlier, had some ups and downs with the promotion, maybe didn't always get the push or the love he deserved. That built a callous, that built a one man against the world attitude. And you have to look at making your pro boxing debut here. He's doing this for himself. He's doing this for a big payday, but he's not here for one big payday. He's here to establish and prove that he can fight with his hands, and it took him a while to certainly craft that in an MMA sense. But this is an entrepreneurial move for him, cashing in on the name value to try to go after something in a sport he thinks he can compete in.
No doubt about it. You can see there in the ring. We saw him earlier with Ivan Baranchyk, but he's back again, Pedro Diaz. I was texting with a friend and longtime trainer on the MMA side with Tyron Woodley, Dean Thomas, and I was asking him about, who'd you get him hooked up with? Because Dean was not training him for this fight. He was like Pedro Diaz, and he was walking down the list of why he did it and why obviously Tyron did it. And they're pretty compelling reasons. We've sort of gone over them already because he's such a encyclopedia of boxing knowledge. But also, as I mentioned earlier, BC, Pedro Diaz has experience working with combat sports athletes who are getting into boxing, and he understands what they're about.
Shows you how great of a coach he is, where he can work with somebody like a Rigondeaux or a Miguel Cotto and add to what they're doing, but just on the same regard, can take someone who doesn't have the natural motions or skill sets of a boxer, but has things as a trainer you'd love that Tyron Woodley has. That explosion, that one-punch knockout power, that willingness, still very quick, very athletic, and defensive. That this can only get video looked. What is the additional thing?
And let's look at Tyron Woodley. Sometimes
pro camp, and Tyron doesn't have an amateur background. I mean, this is a leap. Can you teach him legitimate things that are applicable to his first fight in such short a period of time? Well, like I just said a minute ago, you've got this type of athleticism, speed, and power naturally there in the fighter's mindset. That's different than saying, can this YouTuber show us how tough he really is? Now, Jake Paul's been pretty tough. The 3 pro fights and everything we've seen and heard and talking to him, there's a different type of mind up there to be able to be this high of a businessman, to get him to want to get into this game like he has. But Tyron's also got a very strong foundation to build upon for these smart minds like Pedro Diaz, like Floyd Mayweather. Can they teach just little tiny wrinkles to the craft that he can use? It's going to be interesting to see whether Tyron's going to be a boxer, whether he's going to be a counterpuncher, or if and when, probably when, this fight gets hairy, will he just transition and be a brawler? What will this fight look like after the feeling out period, when the first blood is drawn, when the first big bomb is landed? That's going to be high theater.
Yeah, listen, you can say a lot of different things about Tyron Woodley, positively or negatively. You're not going to say he doesn't have power. And you're not going to say, BC, something we should also talk about. This is a guy who's been competing as a sportsman since the single digits. If you go back to his days of wrestling, as you indicated, he was a collegiate All-American, I believe a Big Ten or Big 12 conference champion, teammates, by the way, with Michael Chandler, teammates with Ben Askren, who became an Olympian, and then got into MMA. So we're talking about he's 40 years old, roughly. For about 30 of that, BC, he's been competing at a pretty, I won't say all of that's been athletically elite, but for 20 of it, elite athletic competition. I don't care what Jake Paul does, and he might win, he cannot replicate that. There is nothing in his background or his arsenal that matches what Tyron has in terms of the value of those decades, literal decades of competitive experience.
How about just this foundational aspect that Jake Paul has yet to have to prove? Can he come back from adversity? Can he get, take a big punch or a knockdown? These are things Tyron Woodley's dealt with. He's fought through being rocked. He's had situations like his first fight against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson in his first title defense, where it was just constant changes of momentum inside Madison Square Garden. Obviously the biggest platform you could possibly have in mixed martial arts. So here's a guy intangibly, like we said, has those foundational aspects.
Sorry about that. We had a bit of a technical glitch, but I think we are back here live in downtown Cleveland, Ohio. You see Tyron Woodley. He'll take on Jake Paul Sunday on pay-per-view. I'm Luke Thomas here with Brian Campbell. And Brian, we were just sort of talking about the mind of Tyron Woodley. Athletic, yes. Power puncher, yes. Smart guy, also.
Doesn't get the credit for his IQ. Let's not forget at the peak of his welterweight title reign, which had an underrated amount of defenses, I think underrated amount of quality of names he beat, but it was the manner that he beat them, Luke, something that I can't stop harping on because I don't think enough people did at that point. He had the type of fighter IQ to be able to look at the strengths of his opponents and beat him with that. There has to be some transfer of power in that and getting into the boxing game. Here's a guy who, as you mentioned, is a very, very good MMA analyst on national broadcasts and really seems to understand the science of what this is. How quickly can he transition that power into a boxing sense where you said, okay, no, there won't be the threat of his takedowns anymore like there was in MMA to set up his big right hands. I'm wondering if he can use the big right hand